Some time ago I produced a video in which I pointed out the essentially genocidal nature of the left. For example, abortion, which is self-evident. Also the advent of the AIDS crisis, which has killed millions of people worldwide, which began with the homosexual liberation movement and the unbridled sexual activity that occurred in San Francisco bathhouses back in the 80s, where you had men having so-called sexual relations with hundreds of other men, and this spread among the homosexual community and then out to society in general. And this uninhibited homosexual lifestyle was very much promoted by leftist ideology. And you can't help reflecting on the mad genocidal tendencies of their communist forebears like Stalin, Mao and Pol Pot, who killed many more millions of people than the fascist Nazi sort of regimes that the left continually invokes. Pol Pot, in passing, was a Maoist, and he was pursuing policies that, not unlike there's a political program that Mao was pursuing in the Cultural Revolution in the 1960s, and they were allied to the Viet Cong in the Vietnam War. And in opposing the Vietnam War, the leftist protesters were helping to facilitate this genocidal communist regime in Southeast Asia. There was a very conservative political party in Australia called the DLP. They were much reviled because of their anti-communism, and they produced a campaign ad in the early 60s which featured the spread of communism. The symbol of this scourge was mounds of skulls and bones, which they featured in this advertising. And the amazing thing was that in the following decade, this mad communist Southeast Asian regime under Pol Pot killed millions of people, and that itself was symbolized by photos of masses of bones and skulls, which was it was as if it was a prophecy of this occurrence, which was the worst Holocaust since the end of the Second World War. And now the backstory to all this is that I always wanted to get hold of a copy of this video and this advertising, and after a lot of research I was eventually able to discover it on YouTube, and I'd like to present it because I think, look at the video and think about it, this was a prediction of an anti-communist political party back in the 60s, and it all came to fruition in the killing fields of Cambodia in the 1970s. It was prophetic, and it's something that's a shocking indictment of leftist political philosophy back then and now. It was a prophecy fulfilled, and it's something the left should be deeply ashamed of.
Communism, the evil force that enslaves 1/3 of the world's population, is moving perilously close to Australia. If you vote ALP, you are voting for a party that works with and helps communists.
I'll just show you some images of the Cambodian genocide, which call to mind the video that you've just seen. The mounds of skulls. Look at them. Foretold in the DLP ad, warning of communism. Absolutely shocking to think that people could know all this stuff in advance and still behave the way they did. The left were doing everything they could back in the 60s to oppose US policy in Vietnam. The people who perpetrated this horror were the allies of the Vietnamese communists and were destined to come into power should the communists be successful in Vietnam, which they were. To say nothing of the many people who were disappeared into re-education camps in Vietnam, or killed, or the millions of people fled the country in horror after the communists took over, and many of those people drowned at sea. We don't even know how many there were, and even before the Vietnam War got going in the 1960s, the communist takeover of North Vietnam had been accompanied by a lot of mass murder. So the left really should hang their heads in shame over this, and to think that this was prefigured in the DLP ad and in the activities of the DLP, indeed, in being such a staunch opponent of communism. And they really should be ashamed of themselves, the left, but I dare say they won't be. Yes, they knew all about the potentialities of communists to commit genocide, but they treated the communist takeover of Indochina as just a big joke, being the adolescents that they were. Have always talked sarcastically about the Red Scare and Reds under the bed. Yeah, good one.